Hey everybody, Happy New Year. Andy, welcome back. Happy New
Thank you,
Year.
Brady. Happy New Year, brother.
That was I don't like taking a week off because I miss seeing you.
I know. I did enjoy the decompression time. That's for sure. So, but again, it's time to get back in the clinic and help improve the quality of patients' lives. And so, just really looking forward to being back in the clinic and being on the podcast with you today.
Yeah, it's always fun. I love Monday mornings now.
Yeah.
So, in the description of this video, there are two links. Okay, number one is the link to the live Zoom class that my wife and I do every week. That is, we call it the 3 Pillars of Health. I don't like to call it a weight loss program, but it is January 4th, so we're going to go ahead and call it the weight loss program. But it is everything you need to help get you going in the right direction, get your health under control. We cover everything in about a half an hour class, plus we'll email out information that you need to get better. Second link is a link to your book, Andy.
Thank you.
Anybody in chronic pain that's sick and tired of being sick and tired, getting the runaround from the doctors, doctors telling them stupid things like, there's nothing we can do, it's in your head, it's genetic. All those are just BS excuses because they don't know how to fix you.
Yep.
That book's $20.
Yep.
On Amazon. So I can't think of a better place to spend $20. Here's something I wanted to start with this morning. I'm gonna go wind the clock back a ways. Before you became a chiropractor, you were throwing tires at Firestone there in Mississippi. Before I became a chiropractor, I was actually a fly fishing guide.
Okay.
And I used to guide this river in Utah called the Green River. It's right below Flaming Gorge Dam. It's an absolutely beautiful place. I still go there once or twice a year on a pilgrimage. But when I first started there, this book, where's my camera? The guy who hired me wrote this book. It's called Utah's Green River, A Fly Fisher's Guide to the Flaming Gorge Tailwater. And a beautifully illustrated book, beautifully written. I learned a lot about how to fish from that book. But when it came out, there were a lot of the guides that were on that river that were actually kind of ticked that he had written it because they felt like they had given away all these secrets. They were catching fish and making a living off catching fish, and all of a sudden everything they were doing was now published. And Denny, who wrote this book, has since passed, and now it's on eBay for $8. The reason why I bring this up is this: between your book and the class that we're doing, we're giving away our secrets.
Yeah.
If people will just follow what we're telling them to do and follow what the book is at, they're going to see significant progress in their lives. And it's all just been out there plain as day for you.
What was the last question?
No, I was just saying it's all just written out there plain as day.
It is, and it's kind of like, I guess you could say, playing chess. The rules are pretty simple, and it's the same thing with healthcare. The rules are pretty simple. But it takes, just like with chess, it takes a lifetime, if ever, that you master it. Okay. And like literally one of the reasons I'm running just a little bit late today is one of the ladies that came in with her husband, the guy's brother died at 73 with a multiple systems atrophy. And she was like, have you ever heard of that? And I was like, basically, as soon as she said multiple systems, I was like, well, yeah, it must, so, and so what they were doing with this guy's brother is they were treating him for Parkinson's. Okay. And then finally they were like, okay, well, it's not Parkinson's, it must be multiple systems atrophy. And here's what I want people to understand is by the time you get a terminal tremor, I mean, you're at end stage pathology. Right. And see, we have tests that we can do of Cyrex array number 5 that's going to test 24 tissue tests. All right. And this test is going to tell you in some situations, decades with an S, decades, that, hey, you have a problem, something's wrong here, but we don't have end stage pathology yet. But that's what medical doctors do. And I'm not talking about where they treat you for for acute care. I'm not talking about that. They're the best in the world at that. We're not talking about acute care. We're talking about where they take that acute care and put it into the chronic arena. And in medicine, will wait. They won't diagnose you until end stage pathology. And why would anybody want to wait for that? And then another thing is, I got a lady that, I think that she does have MS. So we're doing all the Cyrex testing on her. And she said, well, I went to another doctor and they thought I had lupus. So they did the test for lupus.
Right.
And then I said, here's what's going to happen. You're going to keep going to these doctors and you're going to spend the next 20 years of your life because they're going to start doing one test. Well, that's not it. Okay, well, then let's do the next test and let's do the next test. And you're going to spend 20 years of your life doing these individual tests when we can just do the whole test and find out what tissues are being damaged. And if we're not going to diagnose with anybody, that's not my job is to diagnose. My job is to find out what's wrong, what's triggering this, and then what do we do to eliminate this problem? Because it's just like let me give an example as a stroke patient. Even if you've had a stroke, your brain can still create neuroplasticity and reconnect with itself.
Right.
The research as of right now is once those nerves are dead, they're never coming back. Okay. But just because these nerves are dead and they're never coming back, it means that different parts of your brain can actually fill in. And the example I give patients is like this. If you've ever cut a tree limb down, then the space there's not just a big gaping hole in the tree. What happens is all the living tissues, all the living branches, what do? They come in and they start filling in that gap. And years later, you don't even realize that, hey, this thing was even cut, this limb was cut down.
Right.
Because nature just does what it does, and it's going to fill a void if stimulated properly and given the right fuel source. It will actually, it will fill that in. So anyway, that's one of the things I want to talk about this morning.
It's interesting that you say that because, just this weekend, my wife and I are having a conversation, and she's a speech pathologist. So she sees mostly children now, but she used to work at an inpatient facility where they would see stroke victims. And guess what they gave the stroke victims for food?
Probably gluten, sugar, milk.
Breakfast was juice and pastries.
Yeah.
You want this person to recover post-stroke.
I mean, it's insane.
And you're feeding them absolute garbage.
Oh, well, I'll give you another example. There's an autistic center here in Tupelo. And, I did want to say, even though you went back to your little fishing holes every couple of times a year, I don't go back to Cooper Tire at all. On my way from my house every day, I pass by it and kind of wave sometimes. But
do you wave? Do you wave?
I'm going by. But again, it's and I had looked on their website a long time, but back in the day they were they had pastries and all this stuff, and I'm just it just means that if you're trying to enhance the cortical function and create neuroplasticity and activate this brain-derived neurotrophic factor, gluten sensitivity is the best way to kill this. I mean, It's like a metaphor that I use with a patient. If I sit here with a hammer and I keep hitting you in the head, okay, you're not going to improve. I don't care what I do to you. You are not going to improve if I take a hammer and keep hitting you in the head. Now, people can see that.
Right.
Okay. But I said, now let's remove the hammer and use gluten as the hammer, because the autoimmune disorder, the inflammatory responses, the blood sugar dysregulation. And that's the thing I want people to understand about gluten. It's like, they hear the word gluten and it's like, okay, but, autoimmune disorder, inflammatory responses, blood sugar dysregulated, and then that's going to affect anemia. So, I mean, you've got just right there 4 things that can devastate your nervous system. And this is what I want people to understand too is see, with our brain, we don't have pain receptors in our brain. We don't have those up there. So see, when the brain starts to tank, focus, attention, and concentration is the first 3 things that actually go. And with kids, then you have impulsivity, can't focus. And so this is a brain that's not developing like it should.
Right.
And so, and we keep, again, using keep hitting them in the head with that hammer, hitting them in the head with gluten. There's only so far that you can drive this system when you have an autoimmune disorder, inflammatory response, your blood sugar is dysregulated, you have anemia. Man, if somebody does, I don't even have one arm tied behind my back, man. I'm like what we call in Mississippi, pig tied, you hear the metaphor. Well, you got me with one hand tied behind my back, so I'm limited to what I can do. And man, it's when you start eating this gluten, and it's a simple test. It's and that's what I tell people in the book. Just invest in the $369 with InterraLab, and you can order the thing online.
Right.
It'll be the best $360 you've ever invested in yourself. And here's my thing too, is I like to ask people this: when's the last time you invested in yourself? And this is an investment in you that has the potential to totally transform your life. Because if you have this problem, then the next thing you do is again, we can watch your Monday night videos on how to actually help people get help with gluten sensitivity. Back 10 years ago, when I found out that they had this problem, man, you remember how it was back then. 10, 12 years ago, it's probably 12 years ago.
Right.
And it was just like, you would go and cook, like in the South, biscuits are a big thing. And she tried biscuits for the first time. And I'm like, man, I picked up rocks that skipped across the damn pond. Excuse my French there, but across the pond that were softer than these biscuits. But what? She didn't go, oh my gosh, we can't. I can't do. She just figured out ways to make better, biscuits. And then we had Thanksgiving. Everything in your life right now, if you choose it to be, can be better. If you choose,
right.
And then one of the things that we have to do from a healthcare standpoint is we have to choose, to say, hey, I'm going to make, it's January the 4th that we make this tape, and everybody has New Year resolutions. And one of the best, bar none, best New Year's resolution you can do is to find out that if you do have a gluten sensitivity problem, it will totally change your life. And if you do, and to get off gluten. So just doing the test is not going to solve the problem. It's just to say, hey, I've got this problem.
Right.
But then we can say, okay, how do we go about solving this issue? And that's where you come in with these incredible Monday night podcasts with you and your wife on actually how to cook. And again, it's not like it was 12 years ago, 15 years ago, where you have a gluten sensitivity problem and now there's no taste in your food or anything like that. That's that does not exist anymore.
Right. So did you happen to catch the government's new guidelines they just released last week for nutrition?
You're joking, right? No. And,
so here we are at 2021,
yeah.
And they just changed the whole nutrition plate thing again, but it's the same old crap.
Yeah.
It's low fat, high sugar, grains are good for you. And guess what? The leading cause of death is going to be this year, next year, and the years after that.
It's dementia, Alzheimer's, strokes.
Well, they're all directly linked to the standard American diet.
Yeah.
So when you talk about having both hands tied behind our back, I think we're hogtied. We have both hands, both feet. We're coming at this completely hogtied because we have a government and a system that is pushing dietary recommendations that are absolute garbage.
Let me just give you an example. Here's what is so hilarious with the U.S. population. It's a statistic, and I'm trying to be nice. It's like I tell people all the time. It's like, hey, I'm Andy. I'm your friend. I'm just trying to wake you up here. Okay. But if you go out and you ask anybody, if I went to the mall this afternoon and said, do you trust the government? Do you believe what the government? Almost everyone would tell you no. They're nothing but a bunch of con artists. Okay, right. They straight to you. But yet, then the government comes out with this new healthcare lifestyle or whatever, and then people are just supposed to, like there's fake media, fake news. We don't trust the media. We don't trust the news. And now you got this COVID vaccine that everybody's supposed to sign up for, just like a bunch of damn sheep, and pull their shoulder, hey, pop it right here, and actually, I'm surprised the mainstream media even put this out, but 50% of healthcare professionals aren't even going to take this dang thing.
Right.
Okay. Because nobody knows what's in this. And yet again, I'm going to go back to the premise. People don't trust the government. People don't trust the media. But all of a sudden, we've given up our freedom and our liberties to be safe. And I'm not trying to get constitutional on you here, but the Constitution doesn't guarantee safety. It guarantees freedom. So let that sink in for just a second. So we didn't plan on getting into this, but the point is that, people keep listening to the government with their housing, or, the government's going to bail me out, or the government's going to do this. If the government hadn't done squat that's made your life better. Okay. So what makes you think that listening to this new health guideline that the government came up with, somehow mysteriously they're going to get this one thing right that they've screwed up for the last 150 years or whatever?
Well, let's not forget that the government is subsidizing the worst foods on the planet for you.
Yeah,
and corn, wheat, they're all subsidized.
Yeah, and milk, all of that. So, but again, it's high fructose corn syrup. Okay, I mean that's another one. So again, in the book, it's if people will just buy the book and apply the book, and then if they need more, if they need some type of professional help, we're here for them.
Right.
Okay. But again, here's just some step-by-step. Here's what you need to do. But again, like I said, you've got to do more than just read the book. You actually have to apply it, because those saying it's like knowledge and not power. Plus knowledge plus action. You got to implement it. Implementation is power.
100%.
So but it's and I'll give you an example today. I had a guy come in. We got his blood work back, and most doctors, if they're just going to do the glucose test. All right, we did an A1C on him and his wife, and he was 99 on his glucose, which is still in the normal range. All right, but he was a 6.1 on his A1C. And I said, "Did you know that you were type 2 diabetic?" He said, "I had no idea." And I said, "Well, I can understand why, because your doctors probably just ran the glucose test. And if we just had run that by itself, we'd just say, we would have said, hey, you're 99, you're still within the normal range." His wife is type 2 diabetic. It's affecting their kidneys at this point. And then on top of that, we actually found out through that one test that he actually had an autoimmune thyroid. The guy's 57 years old, had no idea. Nobody had ever ran that test. And I'm like, until you came in here, nobody would ever run that test. So, and now we've got to look at him. I recommended that, hey, we need to do the gluten test, because, we see that there's something going on with your thyroid, and 90% of these people with thyroid problems are directly linked to gluten sensitivity. So we need to at least rule it in or rule it out. And what I do, and this is just me, okay, if I recommend a test, and that test comes back and there's nothing abnormal on that test, I actually give the patient a refund on that. The reason is because I'm here to change a person's life. And if I make a bad decision, if I make a bad call and say, you need to run a test, and it comes back and there's nothing wrong with it, I'm giving them a full refund on that. Because the last thing I want a patient to do is think that, I'm just trying to add more labs so I can make more money. Right. No, I'm recommending these labs because you need them. And if I do make a bad call, you get a full refund on this. So I want to make sure that I do the right test, and I'm not just trying to put a bill on somebody.
Right. That's awesome. Well, we haven't talked a whole lot specifically about patients, but I think that's okay. We've covered a lot of good stuff this morning. I know I need to get going here because I've got people lined up. Andy, it's always a pleasure.
Brady, as always, brother, it's always great talking with you. And happy New Year to you and your family. And I look forward to seeing you next week, my friend.
Ditto. Now, remember, the link is in the description of the video for Andy's book, for our Zoom class. Make sure you go to those, and they will change your life if you take action on them. So thank you very much, Andy. I love you, brother.
Love you, man. All right, bye-bye.